Hello and welcome back to the Four Elements Press LGBTQ author series. I'm Alexander Casillas, and today we have a special author. We're going to be talking with Angelica Martinez, author of Livin La Vida Loba, and this is a series published by Four Elements Press. So we'll get an exclusive interview from Angelica, hear a little bit about her and a little bit about her inspiration for writing and about Livin La Vida Loba. Welcome, Angelica. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well, thank you.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in writing Livin La Vida Loba.
Well, I've always been a storyteller since I was really young. My mom and I would sometimes travel, and to kill time, she'd be like, "Okay, mija, tell me a story." And so I'd tell her, something random like the Powerpuff Girls, and I would make up the storylines. And then after like seven chapters, she'd be like, "Okay, mija, let's take a break." So I'm pretty used to kind of coming up with stories on the fly. And I fell in love with poetry and with stories from a young age. I first learned how to read in Spanish, and then from there, I asked my mom to take me to the library because I wanted to read in English. And so I taught myself how to read in English. And so my love of literature and books has been a long time coming. My inspiration for this book is by and large my own experiences and also my family's experiences, because it's about her family as well as her own struggles with mental health.
Yeah. Well, I know Selena's story pretty well at this point. She's a character I've fallen in love with. And how have because you have written a little bit about your own experiences outside of writing the novel. How does Selena kind of capture the different parts of you, or what type of message are you trying to convey through her, maybe mental health struggles or other struggles?
Well, I think what I'm trying to convey is to open up the conversation about mental health since it's very much stigmatized, not just in our American culture, but also our Latino American culture and or Latinx culture, I should say. And it's something that I've been really passionate about because I think had there been less stigma, I might have been diagnosed sooner correctly. Because I was first diagnosed with depression, and she also exhibits signs of depression and anxiety and PTSD and bipolar, as you later find out. And I feel like she kind of holds my neuroses, but also my sassiness. Because there are moments where she is like as quick as a whip and she gives it right back to you. And I feel like that's how I've been able to cope with really difficult and dark times is my sense of humor. And I hope you get that also by reading this book is not just, oh, it's dark and depressing. Like there's also moments of levity and humor in it as well.
Yeah, there is always like a sense that there is a destination, even if you don't quite know if it's going to be great or uh, fearful,
Yeah.
to say the least. Um, I like how you also bring up culture when talking about how Selena and yourself kind of manage different aspects of life. And how does I know music is a big one present in the book.
Yes.
What type of like ways have you kind of infused some of your experiences or learnings into the story?
Well, it kind of starts with Theo Julio's rules, because I thought I always had a lot of rules growing up, which I'm sure a lot of Latinx people can relate to. Like, don't, well, come home before it gets dark, or leave with a sweater, or call me when you get there, or I need to meet your friend's parents, like all these things. And so that was kind of instilled in my head, like, okay, rules are important. And then also with kind of surviving with bipolar disorder and trying to thrive with it, there are a lot of like rules as well. Like there are certain things you can and can't do, like especially if you're on medication. Like sleep is important, exercise is important. You shouldn't drink or do other drugs when you're taking your medicine. Um, so I thought, what's a way I can introduce certain rules of that nature in a way that's more fun and in a book that's kind of a narrative around that. And so that's kind of the framework of the book.
Yeah, and I can see like a lot of the parallels between um like even the werewolf aspect of Selena's story and her changes that she's going through in those physical ways and other ways. Um, and then kind of also juxtaposed to the mental health aspects as well. And also how, a lot of the times too, it could be a physical experience in our body that might be causing different mental health aspects as well.
Yes. I think for me, it was partially because my first manic episode did involve a lot of physicality to it. And that was because I was, um, what's it called? I was experiencing a flare-up of my chronic pain that I didn't know I had. And so while I was losing my brain, like my body was just at level 9 pain. And I kept trying to communicate that to like the health workers, but they kind of ignored me and were like, oh, this is just a part of you're hallucinating or whatever. They didn't tell me that, but I could tell that that was like the vibe that was happening at the moment.
Okay.
Um, and so I kind of felt like, is this what a werewolf would feel like when they're transforming? Like, is this the kind of level of pain they would go through? Because their bones are like moving around and they're developing a tail and all this stuff. And so I always kind of had that in the back of my brain, like, what would happen if a werewolf was a metaphor for bipolar disorder because of all the like mood changes that happen, especially like related to the moon. I even did research on like there are more ER hospital visits on the full moon, whether it's for violent crimes or for psychiatric help. It's a weird
Wow.
phenomenon that happens. And so that kind of inspired this book as well, and kind of led me down that path.
Yeah, well, in the novella, you capture it very well, to say the least.
Thank you.
Um, and I love also how throughout the text, Selena's like progress and even also like pitfalls in kind of managing this new life, also kind of in a more rural setting, away from her home in the city, um, coming up. And I I'm interested too in also your own, I guess, kind of family or cultural experiences and how those inform some of the characters or events in this story, because the characters are all so very real.
Yeah, I kind of go by the old adage, write what you know. And I know my family very well, and they know me very well. And so all the characters in the novella are archetypes based on my own family members. So, the Tia Marisol, who, can't really whisper, and she's the chismosa. I have a tia like that. Um, the Theo who smokes a pack and is kind of like has a wry sense of humor. I have a Theo like that. He doesn't smoke, but he is very much that silent type that when he says something, you better listen. Um, and then, of course, the beloved Tío Julio. I have a tío that's just like that. And it is like a love letter to his character and to him because he helped raise me. And that's also part of this book. He helps raise Selena in her most vulnerable time of turning into a werewolf, but also all her mental health stuff. And even though my uncle missed that part of my life, he is like a big supporter of mine and is like my rock. So I felt like he was crucial to writing this story. And of course, her mother is based off my mother. Her father is based off my father. So maybe not original, but I tried to kind of embellish some of their characteristics because it's not 100% a carbon copy of who they are. There's a lot of exaggeration to make it interesting and to add drama, but that's kind of who they're all based on.
Yeah. I think part of the success in their characters too is like the way that the characters communicate with each other. There is like a lot said, but a lot unsaid, and a lot of things that like characters say to each other that like is in their own type of language. Like they can say three sentences and get to the heart the of what's going on or what is really wrong inside the other character. And I think I don't know, like I don't know if it's just a part of like Hispanic culture, but in Hispanic culture, I feel like there's very a very like we're transparent to each other almost in the way that like our family can kind of see through us.
Yes. I definitely feel like there is a lot of nonverbal communication that happens in that family, in my novella. And I think even though it is a part of our community, I think it's also just a part of the human condition. Like sometimes your family just knows you, and it's hard to hide when they know you so well. And so when something's wrong, it's like you want to be by yourself and isolate, but it's really hard to do that when they can read you like a book. And that and that's something I've experienced as well because when I was having, my issues with grief or with my mental health struggles, my mom immediately knew something was wrong, even though she didn't know what was wrong, but she knew something was wrong. And so I think hopefully people can resonate with that family experience.
Yeah, and also like the aspects of maybe the adults kind of in our lives too also have their own limitations. And, sometimes it takes a lot of work on both ends to kind of get to a place where you can find resolution in things. I think that's a big testament to kind of the story in general, too. So now, also going on to get degrees in creative writing and becoming a teacher and things like that take a lot of work too. How have those experiences also kind of shaped you? And maybe does that kind of does that background play into you choosing to write like a young adult story too?
Yes, I think it does. I fell in love with young adult writing as a young adult, in middle school and high school because I felt like, okay, yes, the classics are good, but you want something relatable. And as a high school teacher, as a middle school teacher, I felt like there's a need for books that have emotionally complex characters, especially from the Latinx community. They need to feel represented and that it's okay and that it's safe to be different. And I feel like nowadays it's stigmatized or cringe to, step outside the box and be different. but I feel like this book kind of speaks to the difference in all of us and that it's okay. Um, but yeah, I definitely felt like this book was needed as a teacher. I worked with special education students, and a lot of them had emotional disabilities. And so I definitely felt like if I were to give them this book, they would probably resonate with a lot of parts of her story.
Yeah, and well, this is just one episode in her very complex life, so I expect like a lot more um help and advice and experiences in in Selena's future to kind of show us even more aspects of different parts of life. And I think that's something that you capture really well in the way that, Selena is a complex character, but she's so like strong in herself and like determined in herself that like even going back to like what I said before, like you always know there's a destination, even if you don't know kind of like what you're hoping for Selena,
Yeah.
you know like she's gonna get there one way or another, and it's gonna be like a hopeful resolution, hopefully. I mean, it gets scary, but I think it is something young readers can relate to a little bit more than, something written maybe 50 years ago too.
Yeah.
And I think that like having more books like this in the curriculum will do exactly like what you said, kind of be a mirror for more people. And
Yeah.
even just a mirror for people who can benefit from reading a story about a character who is so strong in herself. Because like anyone can be like her as a hero, you know?
Yeah. And I think it kind of asks us to be strong and to be bold in our own lives. Um, And I sometimes view main characters as like aspirational, like they aren't always super flawed. Sometimes, I mean, she definitely is flawed, but you know, there's aspects of her that I strive to be in my life because I was never that rebellious teenager. If anything, I was a rebellious, late 20s or and so it took me a while to get to that point, but I hope that it brings that desire to, strive for their goals. Whoever reads the book, whether you're an adult or you're a teenager or a middle schooler, um, and that you feel just as determined as Selena.
Yeah, I like that too, because a lot of the times, like when we're young, we kind of see these goals and they're so aspirational in ways that maybe like we can't even like imagine them not being because
Yeah,
we're just so kind of like believing in things.
yeah,
But Selena, she sets goals for herself that are within the realm of like her life at the moment in a very young way, in a way that like, we did when we were so young.
yeah,
And, even if she doesn't see, all the way past college and all of that, she's still kind of like she's conscious of like, no, I want to be something in this world. I want to be something big. I want to be, yeah, and that's like the conflict between like living in the city and living in the rural area. She's like, I love my like I might not have much. I might not be the, most popular person in school. I might not have everything, but I have what I have and I have what I know. And I have people around me that I do care about, even if I get annoyed seeing them all the time.
yeah. And that is life
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, you want to talk like specifically about like Tio Julio a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, in this story, he is a gay farmer slash werewolf, and he isn't exactly closeted, but he isn't exactly super open about his sexuality either. And there's a scene where she asks him if he's gay, and he says, "Yes, do you have a problem with it?" And she's like, "No, you're just the first gay person I've ever met." And that conversation actually happened in my own life. And I feel like there are a lot of kids that might be able to relate to that because who doesn't have, a gay Theo or Tia in their lives and, become curious about it and just like an innocent curiosity. And so that's kind of what I wanted to portray as just a tidbit about his character, but not the defining feature of who he is. Because he's so much deeper of a character and more complex of a character. He's not a stereotype. He's not there as like comedic relief, even though there are comedic relief moments. He's not the butt of the joke. It's kind of, I tried to be respectful in my representation of who he is as a character because he is so beloved to me, especially as writing him. And he also struggles with mental health issues, just like his niece, which can be genetic, it can be hereditary, but it could also be from like family patterns and dysfunction and trauma. And that's kind of what I wanted to come across is that, we come in all shapes and sizes in the Latinx community, and you can't really say, "Oh, I've met one gay person. I know all gay people." Like, I know exactly how they're going to be like because we're all different. And I wanted him to be a unique character and show how hardworking he is, especially with the farmer aspect. He runs it all by himself. And then finally, here comes this, little teenager that he now has to take care of, and he's annoyed by it, but he loves her because she's family. And that's kind of how it was with my relationship with my uncle. My mom would sometimes drop me off at his house early in the morning when my nanny wouldn't show up, and he'd be like, "Really?" But he would do it because that's what you do for family. And um, I don't know where I was going with this, but basically, there is a lot of love between Selena and her uncle, just like there's a lot of love between me and my uncle. And I wanted that to be kind of represented in this book because, especially when you hear proponents against gay marriage or against gay people adopting, it's like this is proof that they can take care of children, that they are capable of love. And it sh we shouldn't like prejudge people just based off one criteria. You don't know their whole story just based on that. So,
Yeah. And I also like too how within the story, there is a point where, Tio Julio kind of reflects and opens up to Selena, and it like tells a story about a formative story of his and a couple formative stories, but uh, that kind of showed how he's kind of been on a trajectory of like being closed off from the world and how, sometimes and often living in kind of like a closeted way, like sets people on a path that maybe at the time they think is like safety, but like upon looking back can kind of see that, oh, like maybe there is like something that I missed out on by not maybe finding my community where I do
yeah,
belong or demanding my place in the community where I am. That's another kind of like alternative. Um, but and then also the kind of reflection, but also strength that he gets from Selena in like taking a step outside of that comfort zone that he's been in for so long. And
yeah,
then also finding like that, sometimes when you do step out, there is goodness that can come in and like kind of trusting that, but doing so with the right supportive community is really important.
Yeah. And I hope that the people that read this book find their own community because sometimes, we don't have supportive families, but we have found families of friends and people that we can rely on and depend on. And so I hope that this book tells people to reach out, regardless if it's for mental health issues or for sexuality or identity crisis or whatever. Like, it's important to reach out for your community wherever that may be.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, Tio Julio kind of represents in a lot of ways that community that is supportive of growth, of individual growth.
Yeah.
Um, like Selena has a few characters in her life who, like her mom, has a vision for her, who she should be.
Yeah.
Her dad also comes in with kind of like a vision for who she should be.
Yeah.
Tio Julio tells her who she needs to be if she's gonna be around him, but within that takes the time to help her kind of explore herself and um, find who she is becoming in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. I don't know.
And he kind of lets her be who she is. Like, he may not always agree with it, but he allows it to happen. And I feel like that's so important and critical for young people growing up to have that space be given to them to be like, okay, you're gonna mess up, but I'm gonna let you mess up and you're safe because I got you, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it goes to show too how Selena shows like him a way forward too, but like it kind of like challenges him to kind of almost rethink how he's been living. And then with her, like she comes in, but she also like is able to identify and like call out like how his behavior is shaped even by his own anxiety and
Yeah,
how that is like cross generational. And like I think that moment um where like Tio Julio kind of explains why he wasn't like talking in the car when he originally picked her up
yeah,
because he was so anxious. He wanted to get to the house in one piece, basically.
yeah,
Um, as children, as like teenagers, I think to have that skill to reflect on the behavior of adults and um identify where maybe behaviors are coming from or rooting from is a skill that like all teenagers should learn, all
it
adults should
is.
learn.
It is.
Um, and it's not in a lot of books. And I think that's like a missing piece in a lot of like the curriculum of the past, you know? Like it was
Yeah,
always like I take everything at like face value and like that person's evil or that person's great. But no, like these are complex people and sometimes their behaviors are based off of sometimes maybe things out of their control, maybe some things within their control if they can properly treat things, or if they have a list of kind of guides that they follow to, like Tio's rules. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I love it.
yeah. I find that with how adults are, I feel like we like to pretend that we don't have problems and like, oh, I'm perfect. I don't need to work on myself. And then when we interact with children, they're like a mirror to be like, oh no, you got your own shit that you got to work on. And I feel like what inspired that aspect of that book came from my teaching experience because I kind of thought that about myself, that I was all good. Like I had been to therapy. I was like, I'm perfect. I have no character flaws. And then finally, middle schoolers will be real honest with you and they'll point stuff out and they'll trigger you. And it kind of made me realize, oh man, I am a lot more flawed than I thought originally. But then it also made me think back to my own parents because we like to see them as perfect and not having flaws, or if they do make mistakes, like how dare they make a mistake? They're supposed to be perfect. We hold them to this high standard. And I think after going through that experience with teaching, it helped me reflect on, oh, my mom is like this because she has anxiety, or my uncle's like this because he has anxiety, or maybe this is why my dad drinks so much, And there's all these different aspects to life that become like unveiled that show you the hidden motives behind everything. And you no longer take things as face value, like, oh, he's not upset with me personally. He's not mad at me. He was just scared. And so I wanted that to be depicted in the book because I feel like that's so much more realistic than just to have good characters or bad characters, even though there is technically a villain in this book. Um, but even she, I would consider not all that bad. Um, because there are certain parts where, you know, she is charming, so she has that going for her, but not much else. Um, but you'll get to that later, I'm sure, once you read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a question in the comments for everyone. What do you think? Um, no, I like to also how the more villainous characters are kind of like villainous, like in a lot of ways, like it's like they're not just villainous, they're like corrupt, they're like money hungry, they're like connected and networked throughout different like branches of government.
Yeah, I
But
would.
it's so true, you know? Like that is criminality in 2025.
And the funny part is, I wrote this book, especially the beginning part and the end part to it, before, all this crazy stuff in the government started happening. So I don't know if I premonitioned it that, oh, this stuff's going to happen or this sentiment towards immigrants is going to resurge. But, you know, it it's wild how there's that common thread with a lot of dystopian books that, it's Big Brother's watching, it's that government that gets involved and no one is safe unless you look like them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also like it kind of draws a big distinction between like, you know, like the rural and urban kind of like settings and environments. Like Selena is kind of like has more of a target on her in a way, because it's such a small town
Yeah.
and everyone knows everybody and everyone's
Yeah.
tracking everybody.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, like Tio Julio too, um, but he's a farmer and that's his life. That's what he does. That's what he
Yeah.
likes. But also he's kind of afraid to kind of like be himself. So the city would kind of like be a lot to handle.
Yeah.
But also there's a big distinction between like someone like Sherry would like thrive in that rural setting and she can be as invisible as she wants to be because she could just kind of like blend in and be kind of elusive if she wants and even get away with things. And then like also kind of how they can like just blend into being
A normal
anyone,
family.
yeah, a normal family or anyone in society.
Yeah.
But also how, werewolves like heroes in the moonlight can also kind of be that neighbor that you don't know is there too, unless you open up that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's like, well, I mean, the main part of the story is like Selena with her friends. And we barely kind of scratched the surface on the friendships, but we can even look at Daisy and how Daisy approaches Selena, um, kind of outs her in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of like authenticity allows them to develop a bigger friendship, a deeper friendship, and like
Yeah.
a connection that's like supportive and never going away.
Yeah.
That's also complex and hot and cold in its own middle school friendshipy way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like sometimes our friends can see us and sometimes they see the parts that we want to hide. Um, Especially when you're young and you're developing and you don't quite know who you are as a person and there's a lot going on with her and there's also this element of like puberty too that happens and I feel like werewolves are so women coded because of the full moon and like the moon cycle and periods and all that, which I kind of allude to in the book as well. Um, and I feel like there's just so many layers to the werewolf metaphor, especially in this book, because I find that what inspired me the most was when people in the 1930s and maybe even later in the timeline were like being thrown into institutions for mental health issues. And like if you had a relative with a mental health issue, you just didn't talk about it and you didn't ask questions and no one saw them ever again. And so that's kind of the vibe I was writing under with the reference to like the werewolfness and the mental health issues because, people in this story have relatives that are werewolves, but no one really likes to talk about it, except for maybe Selena's dad, who's way more open about it. He's probably the most open out of all of them. Um, but that's because he doesn't really know to have shame, whereas the other ones have shame. So I think that's also an interesting distinction between the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a really stark difference between her dad's approach to being a werewolf and even just life in general
Yeah,
that I'm really interested to explore later in the series too.
yeah,
I can't wait to learn more because he really does bring about like a different way, like a completely different way of living.
yeah,
And but he also kind of teaches Selena that, maybe that there could be a balance, right?
yeah,
And that's always the struggle, the human struggle is like finding that balance in life.
yeah,
And then Daisy, with Daisy's like history of her family being werewolves, um, it's interesting to see kind of like the differences in her family. Like her family also doesn't like to talk about anything, doesn't want her exposed, but wants Daisy protected.
yeah,
It's like how much do you and even Daisy kind of comes to this question of like, how am I supposed to be prepared for the world and the reality of it if I'm not getting all the information and all the tools I need from my
yeah.
parents?
And so she seeks it out on her own. That's kind of her approach to life. And I feel like I can relate to Daisy's character in that way that, I was very much bubbled and sheltered as a child. And I learned about, big stuff in life through research and books and Google. And so I think there is some harm that can be done if we over shelter our children. And it's interesting, it was just banned book week this week. And I feel like if we try to shelter kids from books with important messages, we're doing a disservice to them because if they don't find it from books, they're going to find it in much worse ways. So,
Yeah, and even just the kind of, because you brought up the historical institutionalization of people, but people have also been institutionalized because they're LGBT.
exactly.
And like how there really is like a divergence between like people wanting to just live and like have write books and like not have them banned, and
Yeah,
then people wanting to drastically like just institutionalize them and make them criminals just for existing. It's like the sides aren't equal.
they're not.
And like there's a false kind of like equivalence being accepted by like a lot of people in society right now, and it's kind of like mind-boggling because that's not how like kids learn. That's not how like things like being gay happens. Like
Yeah,
you're born this way
yeah,
and you like choose to either, live a closeted life and really mess with yourself mentally, right? Because you're like punishing yourself, you're denying like your truth,
yeah,
or being yourself, but also taking a risk in doing that, taking a risk professionally. Like Tio Julio is concerned about his reputation in town and his
yeah,
ability to keep his farm.
yeah,
And he only knows a way of kind of like doing that by keeping himself from really being himself.
yeah,
But it's not easy. But I think, Selena's story gives a lot of realness, but also like a lot of, you know, I can feel outside of my own life because of what's going on in her life.
yeah. It's really easy to get sucked in and be distracted for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is like um the pool party scene because it's just like it's so like, got dropped off at someone's house and they have a pool in middle school. Like, okay, pool party, nothing else exists in the world except like that backyard.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then the world comes knocking back.
Yeah.
It's funny. So, tell us a little bit about your plans for the series and, your plans as a writer just in general.
Well, my plans for the series, I have 7 books in total planned. Um, I for sure know what's happening in the second and third book, and then beyond that, I'm gonna figure it out. The second book, which I'm working on right now, I'm halfway done, is Living La Vida Llorona, which is gonna be a ghost story. So you're gonna meet a ghost, and at first, you're not sure what to make of her, but then later on, you find out her secret identity, which is given in the title. But of course, the main character, Selena, does not know that. And she knows the legend of La Llorona, but it doesn't click exactly because when she meets the ghost for the first time, she doesn't give her the name that other people call her by. She gives her birth name. And so I made up the birth name because, of course, we don't know who La Llorona is based off of because it's a folk's tale, old wives' tale. Um, but I kind of wanted to do a spin on that story because I've always been curious about ghosts and the paranormal, which is why I'm writing a paranormal story. And then the third book is Living La Vida Bruja, and that is based more on stuff that's actually happened to me in real life when I was dabbling in witchcraft and dealing with different types of brujas, good and bad. So you'll find out more about that when it comes out. And then as for a writer, I want to write a children's book series based on my experiences in the classroom as a special ed teacher and have each book be based on a different kid and their issue or disability and kind of expand on that as a learning experience for parents and teachers, but also so kids can see themselves in books. Um, because I feel like we rarely get to see that in its full spectrum.
I think this can really be a series that will be fun and enjoyable, but also like rereadable
Yeah,
in a lot of the ways like that kids like reread a lot of different like series. And it kind of it has all the elements of like, family, friends, outside life, school life. Great job.
thank
Great,
you
great
so
job.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great
I
job to you
know.
too, because you were my editor.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited to see how more readers enjoy it. We've seen a couple of five-star reviews, which is fantastic. And we've had some really great reviews from people saying that it grabs them, takes them, they can't put it down. So that's fantastic. And then there are even like the book club readers guide questions in the back too that should be really fun too. So maybe we'll put some of those kind of in the description below and maybe even in the article.
Yeah,
Yeah, people can check it out, get a little bit more of a sense of what the book's about. And then obviously everyone go buy it. Support Angelica.
support.
And we'll be posting more about her upcoming works. We'll do another interview where Angelica will maybe do a reading for us, and then we'll be following all of her events. So follow Four Elements Press on socials, follow Angelica on socials, and sign up for the newsletter on the website so that you get alerted about everything we're doing because there's going to be a lot coming
Yes.
up.
Yes, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Bye. Live in La Vida Loba, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.